So I know we missed last night's story time. Sorry about that. Last night was rough. Three-nagers, as I like to call her when she's being especially fun. They have a way of just ruining everything. So anyways, tonight we wanted to go ahead and do our usual Thursday night thing. I know it's a Friday night, and I know none of us have anything better to do on a Friday night than sit on Facebook and watch two random people talk about marriage. So the topic I want to talk about tonight is finding faults in your spouse. Oh, hold on. I got to go get something because
Of course.
I wrote down a verse that I wanted to talk about, but I forgot it. So here, it's in my notebook. Can you just hold that?
One thing is finding faults in your spouse. Not being prepared could be one thing.
That's not what we're talking about.
Normally, I would have things organized, ready to go, but then we have Shannon over here.
No.
But yeah, so finding faults in your spouse. A lot of times when you first get married or when you first start dating, a lot of that stuff doesn't really come into play because everybody's on their prom date behavior where you want to be impressive and you never would say anything to, what's the word I'm looking for?
Nothing to upset the other person, be offensive or...
So, but then as you get used to each other, whether it's a month or a year or 6 months or 10 years, then you kind of let that go a little bit.
Yeah. And one thing in our last class that we did at the church, we had a little video we watched. And in it, he made a great point where he said, he would talk to newlyweds before they're getting married and ask them, why are you marrying Deke? Or whoever the person's married. And the girl and the guy, both ways, could go on and on about how great the other person is, and oh, he does this and she does that, and he's so great at this and she's so great at that. But then you talk to that same couple 5-10 years down the road, and you start to get a different story of, oh, well, he never does this, or she doesn't do that. And it becomes all about the faults instead of about the... What's opposite of faults?
Not faults?
Yeah. Instead of the not faults. One thing that can really strengthen your marriage and protect it is by not allowing yourself to really buy into those faults. And one way to do that as well is never to put your spouse down to others. So whether that's on Facebook, on social media type situations, or in person to someone. And now I know we all need to vent at times, right? And get our frustrations out. But I really try when I do that. And if you're one of my close friends, you know that I've probably said, oh my God, he's driving me nuts. But then you've probably also heard me say 10 times more some great things, because what you think and what you say becomes your reality. And the more you focus on the faults, the more that's what you're going to see. But the more you focus on the positives, I think that was the word I was going for, positives.
Positive.
The more you focus on the positives, and the more you're going to see that, and that will become what you think of with your spouse. So I grabbed my notes. I'm sorry this is shaking so much. I don't really have a good place to set it. So the verse that I thought went really well with this is Ephesians 4:2. And it says, always be humble and gentle, be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. So again, going back to having patience with each other, seeing each other as, God's children, and really allowing for grace in those times where you don't really want to maybe show grace. I know we've done this exercise before too, where you write down each other's faults. If you're really brave, you can do that one. So I would write down the faults that I see in him, and he would write down the faults he sees in me.
The one that she sees in me, and then the many that I see in her.
Or if you don't want to be that cruel, you can just write down your own faults. However, we did that, and he wanted to edit my list and tell me all the ones that I missed about myself.
I wanted to make sure she got it right.
So, you know, there's always that. But what I like to think about too is like the things that I might consider faults or that make me mad or anger me, you know, when you look at them in a week, in a month, in 6 months, in a year, 10 years, is it going to be that big of a deal? Is it that big of a deal, you know, that he drank an entire carton of orange juice when I told him not to? No, I mean, he might get diabetes from it, but it's not worth holding a grudge and getting pissy about it, right? So I want you to think about what your marriage looks like. Are you in that newlywed stage of like, oh my gosh, they're great, there's nothing they can do wrong? Or are you kind of more in that veteran stage of, oh, you want to know what's wrong with them? Let me tell you how many things I can name. And I don't think either one is necessarily where we need to spend our time, but maybe finding a good balance of seeing each other's faults, but giving each other grace in those faults and focusing on the positives. Do you think that's good?
Sounds great.
So, in the interest of time, I do not want to keep you guys any longer. I know last week's video went super long. I was trying to keep this one short. But what I would love is any strategies that you guys have found that help with focusing on your spouse's positives. Focusing on each other's positives instead of each other's faults, and maybe ways you can start implementing that. Like I said, one way I really like is to never post anything negative or rude or mean about your spouse. Deke and I joke a lot, so you've probably seen stuff.
Unless it's funny. If it's funny, it's okay.
Then that's fine. No, we joke a lot, and so a lot of things that we post, people will tell me like, oh my gosh, I could never post that about my spouse. Like, they'd be so mad. But that's our humor, and we get that about each other. We're not posting things that make each other upset or angry. So you kind of have to know what your boundaries are with your spouse and what they find as funny and what they think is not funny. But humor always adds to a marriage, so keep that in mind. Anything you want to add before call it a night?
I think it's great. Again, if anybody ever wants to know any of her faults, I'll go show you the bathroom and the bathroom floor and the tub, and then you can see the type of faults that
I swear, I'm going to clean it one day.
Yeah, one day. I mean,
it's always tomorrow.
So, yeah.
Tomorrow I'm going to clean it, and then tomorrow comes and it's tomorrow.
Yeah. Never put off today what you can do the day after tomorrow or something like that. Yeah, what she
Well,
said.
if anyone ever wants to know his faults, just look at how often he's on Clash of Clans instead of, you know, maybe engaging with his family. Just give me 3 minutes. I gotta do this raid.
Oh, yeah? Just check Facebook every 5 seconds, and you'll see how many times someone's on Facebook.
Anyway,
I wish I was on Facebook a quarter of the time, or a quarter of the time, okay? Just check my post and then check her post and see how many, okay?
So many faults we can point out in each other. But he is super handsome, don't you think? Look.
Hey, knock it off.
See. So focus on each other's positives, especially make an effort this week to focus on each other's positives, build each other up, and give grace in faults. I'd love to hear any feedback you have of strategies you've implemented in your marriage to make this happen, or any advice you have for other people. Talk to you later.
Deuces.
Bye.